They didn't put it there. Remember Steve Demlo? Yeah, those are the kind of things he said. Demlo and Sack. Really well engineered.
Where's the cat? Come on. I should be getting picky.
I was going to say, yeah. It's like a
What about Bob Royer? What? Like living in like a camper or something, wasn't he? Like going around? No, I know, but I thought Bob's not a camper. It's a house that moves. Wait, but how Bob did it first? Right, yeah.
I got a whole other appreciation for how hard these are to put together.
It was worth your $10.
Well, they don't give you much of a margin there. Where's Tony? There's no margin on this thing. Hey, that's the problem, Tony. There's no margin on that. The photograph and the frame are like right on top of each other. They use up their margin. This is exactly
No margin management.
No.
Oh my God.
So you obviously were not involved with this. Otherwise,
I'm supposed to be watching the sun.
I'm going to go somewhere else.
start promptly at 7. Oh my God.
Yeah, let's get both. Hang on to that. Are you staying here?
Yeah.
If you can. All right, well, we'll do another time. Yeah, but let's
Yes.
And the bars? Yeah, well, thank you, Dad.
Yes. That includes.
This is fantastic. I'm watching this from afar. This rather than I don't know who. I'm gonna keep my nose out. When they call, they call. Well, as it says, I don't want to know. But you notice at the back, both of them are the same size.
Thank you.
So it's just the same place in Oregon. So do I.
The only issue
I told Tony, no margin.
That's what he called me.
You gotta use that. The picture's here, the frame's here. No margin.
105.
You gotta find margin. He said there was no margin there. He went right to it.
I remember when Smiley retired. I got you.
Yeah. So we're gonna
Place over in
Jason,
Georgia.
why don't you put this over here? Or should I put it on the table?
It might make a coffee.
While everybody talked.
Yeah. The 30th, the last day of the month. That's the way they do it. The last day of the month. Yeah, Kurt has been mentoring like the transition because it's Kurt and actually it's Fred. He can
Yeah, I'm good.
give me some tips as well. Also some financial advice along the way.
Yeah, because the injection. Dave, one thing I want to check. I'm going to turn. I turned the lights down before this part, but that was on. The only thing question is it's too dark for. So I'll have you check it. I got to get this display to work. I don't know why it doesn't automatically pick it up. Huh? Yeah. Well, it is, but it's not. It's kind of, but it's the right source. But why? I don't know. It's funky that it.
You're getting an image. You can see the.
Oh, all right.
It's just have a black screen. You can look at the quality and see where the icons are right here.
Yeah. So I'm.
You probably have a split screen. So if you hit F5, what happens?
F5.
Yeah. So or start the presentation by
Oh, amazing.
clicking that. So it thinks that there's two monitors. This is your left monitor. This is your right monitor.
Perfect. So you tell me when does it go on automatically, or do you do something to go?
I'm ready to go. You just give me the sign and we'll be on.
Just look. Yeah, right.
Your own Carol Diane. Force of course.
No, I've had 3. I think I have any more. I'll be a little. Oh, okay. Great. Good. Yeah, I'm going to test that now. Okay, thanks so much. Okay.
This is what we did, this is what we found. You could go find it. You sent it Monday.
We can't see you, it's great.
I do like it that you can't see me. I got to check with Mr. Bizzolo.
Can't see the
You
signal
can
in
see
the
the
dark.
screen, but that's it. You haven't seen anything else.
I think it's like an all or nothing, right? There's not another switch, right? It's either. I want people to see the screen. They don't need to see me. Well, I need to see my notes. I guess that's Ooh. Hey, that's good. How's that? All right, thank you. All right. Are we live? We are. All right. I got to tell you, I've been working on this for a while, but I'm still nervous. So. All right, so here we go. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. And Tony, we made it. You know, this is like a wedding. Carol and I have been planning this thing, and you know, I feel like the father of the bride. So a little excited, but I also have very emotional. So. So yeah, so Tony, Tony, don't go, man, don't go. So everybody knows we are live streaming. This is going to be YouTube. I don't know. Probably somebody will find this on YouTube. But we've got folks remotely, I believe, that are tying in. We don't know who's tying in. If they want, they can chat and let us know. We've got 5 people. I believe we have some folks from Naval Reactors. Not sure if you have anybody from the UK. It might be past their bedtime. There's some folks who maybe from Pittsburgh who weren't able to come up. So again, welcome and thank you for those folks remotely that are joining us. I want to also, first of all, acknowledge some special guests that we have with us tonight. We have Tony's family here, which is really great. Tony's son, John, and John's wife, Catherine. Really nice to meet you and have you here tonight. And Tony's daughter, Diane, and her husband, Neek. Welcome, and it's good to see you. And of course, we have the Capo de Du Capo, which of course we know Tony is the boss of all bosses. Kathy is, make no mistake about that. And I'll, just as a full disclaimer, I will apologize in advance. This is a private event. It does not represent the position of the NNL. Boyle made me say that. So. I also want to thank some of our out-of-town guests who've traveled up here. We have Larry Young and his wife Robin. Larry and Robin, really great to see you, Larry. Larry was the fleet sport director before Bob took over, and Larry was certainly at the lab a number of years, even though he's a Clarkson grad. I remember that. My brother went to Clarkson, I went to RPI, but you know, so we're still good to see you though, Larry. Larry's up from Tennessee. Yeah, although you've had the better of us in the hockey for the last several years, so I can't say too much. We have John Wolf here from Pittsburgh. John, really great to see you, and it's so nice of you to come up from Pittsburgh. John is our former general manager of the Naval Nuclear Lab, and good to see you. Thank you for coming. And again, I mentioned we have a number of folks who are remote, so thank you for tying in, and we will be recording this, which I got to admit makes me nervous, but we're going to record it, and I think we're going to have it on our site. I don't know, Dave, is it going to be on our site? Okay, good. So, so if you want to go back, and maybe we can do some editing or bloopers, we'll see. But, I would be remiss before I get too far if I didn't thank Carol Trombley. Carol really organized. Yes, thank And if you like the advertising poster, that was Carol's handiwork. So I gave Carol a couple suggestions, and she kind of ran with it. And so that Carol really had a good time with it, and so we had some fun. I am a little jealous, though. I got to admit, I worked out, used to bodybuild, and I always said I had good legs, but these legs are looking pretty good there. So I gotta get back to the gym here a little bit. But yeah, so you're looking good there, Tony. But
I'll get you on the bikes.
All right, I need that. So one lesson learned: if you when you decide to do Sports Illustrated, if you Google Sports Illustrated cover, you might not get what you think. And so we didn't go that direction. Tony in a swimsuit, not a good idea. So just be careful when you Google that. Carol proposed it, but we quickly put that idea in. So, yeah. And the other thing, I also certainly want to thank Dave Pizzolo. Dave is our IT expert, and Dave has helped set up the So Dave has set up all the YouTube streaming, and he's more capable than I can do. He scared the venue because he said, "Can we tie an Ethernet into your router?" And they you can't do that. So luckily their Wi-Fi signal was good enough, and it seems to be working. So hopefully folks remotely are able to see and hear us okay. Now, if you've ever worked with Tony, you know that if we go into a program review, the things that he likes to do is do a slide review. And I'd be lying if I say people look forward to that, right? It's not, nobody wants to do a slide review with Tony because it would be a very slow and careful review of the slides because Tony wanted to manage the message. And I know he wanted to do that tonight. I could tell. He'd ask how things are going, and he would have liked to have done a slide review, but was not going to let that happen.
I asked, I tried.
He tried. I could see it. I could see the unease in his body language, but so I know this scares the hell out of Tony. For the first time in his career, he's going into a presentation that he has not seen the slides. So buckle up, Tony, because here we go. So as many of you know, Tony's career spans more than 40 years, and I really want to do justice to that. It's a remarkable career. I think the fact that the people that have turned out, the well wishes we've gotten, the gifts, which we'll talk about, really shows how much Tony means to the program and the impact he's had. So in order to do justice, I've went through his folder, and so I've got, for the next 2.5 hours, I'm going to give you a good summary of all of Tony's accomplishments. I'm kidding. I scrubbed it down to an hour and a half. So, but what was surprising to me, I pulled Tony's folder. I asked Carol, let's get Tony's folder out. Let's see what we got in there. I expected some photos. Not one photo in that. So I don't know if Tony got in there and purged it, but there are a couple things he missed.
The camera's always broke.
Yeah, not one photo. But not to be deterred, while Tony was in Pittsburgh, I made a road trip to his house, and Kathy and I managed to get so yeah. And those are probably much better than the ones that be in your folder anyway, shaking hands and all that. So anyway, so just want you to know, Tony, Kathy and I worked on this, and so again, I went to the Capo tu Capo, and Kathy took care of it. So thank you, Kathy, and I do have your photos here. The first thing I do want to talk about, though, is Tony's remarkable career and the influence he's had on what we say the world's best Navy, and it is. And when you look at it, Tony's been involved in one way or the other in basically supporting all of our nuclear warships that are at sea. Whether it was in the early design phase for those ships that are out there now, or in supporting and maintaining them, making sure that they were safe to operate, from carriers to subs. Tony's had his hand in all of the entire fleet. And it's really incredible when you look at the roles he's had and the influence he's had on that. And that's an influence that will go well beyond our careers. Those ships will be out there for many more years, and they will operate based on the work that Tony and his groups have done over the last decades. So a little history of Tony, if you don't know. Tony attended Polytechnic Institute of New York in Brooklyn. From 1971 to 1975, he got his bachelor's degree. And in 1976, he received his master's degree in mechanical engineering. Let's see if this. I don't know, Dave, this doesn't. Any technical assistance? Oh, on. Yes. Okay. All right. That's why I'm a department manager. You don't have to know that stuff. Now, this is before Tony was there, but this is the building. This is the building in Brooklyn. Yeah. And when I looked this up, and I've heard this before, but it's a very impressive school. You look at the graduates that have gone through that school. There's Nobel Prize winners, astronauts, the former CEO of Clorox and the first African-American woman that had a Fortune 500 company, the team that designed and tested the lunar module for Apollo 11. It was incredibly impressive school, and it was known very well for their engineering prowess, and of course, the fact that Tony was there shouldn't be a surprise. Today it's called the New York University Tandon School of Engineering because of a large donation from the Tandon family, $100 million. So Tony, if you want to change it to the Basirico, it's something to consider. So of course in this long, distinguished line of graduates was Tony. Now, the 4x4 is okay. I'm a little not sure about what happened to the 3x3, but you know, that's okay. So along with that long list is Tony Basirico. Now, in the file I did have a lot of information. I have Tony's transcripts. Because of course you provide your transcripts when you come here. And the comments about why they did or didn't want to hire Tony into the lab. So in his transcripts, Tony had an impressive 3.76 GPA for his master's degree. And I was like, gee, that's pretty good. I didn't have that. I couldn't get that. So, and I always know Tony's smarter than I am. So I wasn't surprised, but I had to find something in there. So I looked really hard. And you know, one thing that did stand out is Tony did get a D in advanced differential equations. I was really disappointed, Tony. I mean, that was, you know, 3.76, but somehow so I know that that's probably still eating at you all these years later. I did get an A in that. That's the only class that I did better than you. So I'm giving you my Diffie Q book, and I hope that you'll study that, and maybe I'll check in with you in a few months to make sure that there's some homework in the back. All right, so. You'll check it? Yeah, I will check it, yeah. So. It isn't often I have something better than Tony's. That was my one victory. So, after graduating from college, Tony went to work for Bethlehem Steel for 3 years as a research engineer at their Homer Research Lab in Bethlehem. And in 1979, Tony went to work for Ford Motor Company as a product design engineer in Dearborn, Michigan. And in that job, Tony was responsible for all aspects of the Ford truck air brake compressors. And this included vendor negotiations and production feasibility reviews. So I thought, God help those poor vendors that were negotiating with Tony. Right? And I think that's probably a skill that he used later on in his career on these negotiations. So I think
that was a rather interesting guy.
Yeah. So now I know where you got that from. We're working with the vendors and negotiating. So in 1981, Tony interviewed at Capel. And I looked at the paperwork, and you know, when I interviewed at Capel, I think they were arguing who the hell was going to give me an offer because there was the opposite saying, you take them, you take them. Well, Tony got 2 offers. They said, hey, Tony, there's 2 offers. You pick which one you want. So they liked Tony so much, his experience was so good that they gave him 2 offers. And one was to work in the SAG Power Plant Mechanical Organization, reporting to Dick Kramer. And the other was to work in the SAG Plant Analysis Group, reporting to Tom Donahue. So this was a fateful decision because Tony could have been a power plant mechanical engineer. I just cannot wrap my head around that, Tony. Working on, so luckily, Tony made the decision to go in the HE Plant Analysis Group working for Tom Donahue. And that's a decision that set on path his next 40-year career. Because he's, one way or the other, has been in the reactor design area, mostly thermal hydraulics, a little bit of physics, a little bit of methods development, but that decision really launched his career, and it's just interesting that. So I was impressed that you got 2 offers.
So was I.
So yeah, the thought that you not being in plant analysis is just inconceivable. So thank God, Tony. It's like an alternate reality if you weren't there. So Tony worked in the SAG Plant Analysis Group until 1984. Then he became a nuke for about a year or so. Worked with Floyd Merriman, and he worked on the AFR Nuclear Analysis Group.
And Burke Barron.
Burke Barron, yes. Yep. Many of you may remember those folks, certainly Floyd Merriman, I remember. And he got experience running physics codes, power distributions, all the things that our physicists do. And I think today about how knowledgeable Tony was of that aspect of the business, even though he was known as thermal hydraulics, because he did that for about a year or so. But then Tony had enough of the nuke stuff. He did that for about a year. And then he became the senior engineer on the Advanced Fleet Reactor in the Reactor Performance Group, reporting to Ray Mizowitz. Now, Advanced Fleet Reactor was our prototype for the Seawolf submarine, and it was the latest design that we had in our program back then. Now, if you don't know Ray Mizowitz, many of you may know Ray Mizowitz, Ray was not what we would call a kinder and gentler manager, right? But many people learned a lot from Ray. He was a good, tough manager, but he knew his business. And he certainly liked Tony, because you're going to see Tony worked for him for a number of years in 2 different time slots. And so Ray obviously liked Tony and sought him out when the opportunity came. So Tony worked for Ray for the next 5 years, first as a lead engineer in the group, and then as a supervising engineer. And that was a position back then that was basically the equivalent of a unit manager level-wise, but they weren't called unit managers. And when we changed our system, remember, that was a source of hate and discontent. But Tony was basically at the level of a unit manager called the supervising engineer. And he did that, and then until 1991, and then Tony got his first unit manager position as the manager of methods development, working for Jerry Lazaruk. Now, if you know Jerry, Jerry loved to smoke, so you never see him without a cigarette in his hand. And when we finally went to the policy where you couldn't smoke, we had to put a little sign. You had to be 35 feet away from the door. We had to put one just for Jerry, because he would always kind of edge up. So Jerry was Tony's manager, and he did that again also for about a year. It was his first unit job, and again, fleet and thermal performance drew Tony back into that area, and
Couldn't hold the job.
You went in them, but you continue to go back to the fleet, and I think that's been a clear message that your drive to support the fleet is there. And then Tony went and became the manager of the Thermal Performance Analysis Group, again, reporting to Ray Mizowitz. So Tony was a little bit of a glutton for punishment, but and because Ray had become the subdivision manager at that time. And that group was responsible for the S9G, the NGR, Next Generation Reactor, which is today is the reactor we have in our Virginia-class submarine. And that reactor will be out there for decades to come. And so Tony and his group worked on the initial thermal performance of that design. And Tony worked in that role for the next 4 years, until he was promoted to his first subdivision role as the manager of advanced reactor engineering. And really, Tony held this important fleet role effectively for the rest of his career. The organization's changed a little bit, the titles changed, but Tony's role as the fleet performance manager really continued on from that day. And so when you think of, we always kid, you think of Mr. Reactor Performance, you think of thermal margin, you think of Tony Basirico, because he's been doing that for a long time. Tony initially reported to Mike Quinn, who became our general manager lately, then to Dave Collum, then to Larry Young, and Vince Perrone. And Tony had the misfortune now of, I'll say reporting to me, but Tony and I, again, it's always a question of who's reporting to whom. So I often seek Tony's advice, because he knows that business really well. And I do rely on his advice, and again, I really do appreciate it. I kid you, I appreciate it. So like I mentioned, Kathy did have some work photos of Tony over the years, so we'll just do a little trip down maybe memory lane. I think this was one of the leadership development classes, maybe, Tony. There's a lot of familiar faces. Mark Lemary was my lead engineer when I was back in the 3G organization. I see Mike Gosden, Bob Gatley, Eric Johnson. I'm sure there's some other names there. But Tony is over on the left. And Bob Fontaine. So,
Backwell.
yeah. And then, of course, it was Tony's graduation from the Reactor Design and Analysis class, RAPDAP, as we fondly called it. There's Tony in the front, Bob Clemens next to him, Paul Schreiber. And out of this photo, there's a couple people still around. Trevor Monroe is still there. And I said, Trevor, I was going through photos, and you and Tony are one of the few people left of your graduating class. He goes, yeah, I've got a son getting ready to go to college. So I got a few more years yet, so he's safe. And then, of course, this photo we've seen a lot in the lab, but this is a photo, and a number of folks are still in this photo in the lab. This is Tony working in the 9G group. There's Ray Mizowitz, and of course, Jim Smiley, who is the department manager.
So the picture that's on the back of here is from there.
Yes, yes. Yeah. So, again,
That was quite a group.
it was kind of group, and you look at the folks that are there, several are still here, but this was a tremendous thermal hydraulic group that really developed the next generation reactor, our Virginia class core. So. wasn't all business. A little bit of fun. Of course, our good friend Dave Heidinger. Some folks who are here in this room, I see in the picture. Joe Wakes Norris. Steve Bjork here. Steve, maybe he's tying in, hopefully remotely. But holiday Christmas party from 2007. Lamont Trutling is here in the group. So Tom Nicholson. I know, Tom, you're in the photo. Rosemary. So. And of course, Tony would often go to the core vendor for vendor reviews. And Tony had a great deal of respect down in our headquarters. And here he is with Admiral Richardson, head of the Naval Reactors Program. I assume this is at the core vendor. It looks, no? Oh, is that Capital? Okay.
I think that's in the UK, right?
Is that Capital? Okay. Now I also want to read from our current Admiral, Admiral Caldwell. Admiral Caldwell sent Tony a note wishing him congratulations. I won't ask you to read that letter, but I will read it. Again, I think an indication that the Admirals don't send letters to a lot of folks. It gets to be difficult, but when Tony retired, there was no hesitation. And I want to thank Naval Reactors, Dr. Cabbage. I'm not sure if Dr. Cabbage is on. John Listowski for helping coordinate that, but I really appreciate that. And I have the master here. So let me just read it to you. Dear Mr. Basirico, in light of your forthcoming retirement, I'd like to personally thank you for your dedicated and distinguished career of over 40 years with the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. Beginning in 1980, your engineering prowess and managerial skills in all aspects of reactor core and plant analysis work have been essential for the design and operation of more than 8 reactor plant designs. Your efforts have ensured safe and effective operation of reactors in the Navy's strategic Trident-class ballistic missile submarines, Seawolf, and Virginia-class attack submarines, Nimitz-class aircraft carriers, as well as the Navy's advanced technology prototypes. Your efforts have been essential elements to our national defense strategy. You work to create effective and reliable reactor plant analysis support across both Bettis and Knowles sites. You work tirelessly to overcome traditional laboratory divisions, forming the cohesive enterprise that exists today. You led development of the core analysis process, CAPS, establishing a common set of plant analysis tools, improving efficiency of performance analysis work, and increasing program agility. Your leadership was essential in resolving challenging issues such as the task force ensuring continued operation of the Los Angeles-class attack submarines and Nimitz-class performance margin recovery. You have also aided our allies in the United Kingdom through the development of the reactor for their new ballistic missile submarine. Your technical and innovative management of reactor performance, delivering safe and effective nuclear power for the Navy's entire operating fleet, is an outstanding example for future generations. You can proudly look back at your exemplary career at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory and know that you have truly made a difference to the Navy and to the country. Again, I express my personal thanks for your contribution and sacrifices that you and your family made throughout the years. I wish you the best in this next chapter of life. Bravo Zulu, well done. That's the Navy slogan for Bravo, well done job. Bravo Zulu, James Caldwell, Admiral, U.S. Navy. So, Tony will have this for you. And as the letter mentions, Tony's influence went not only to the United States, but he had a very close working relationship with the UK, what we would call continuing that special relationship that we have with the UK. I apologize to my UK friends, and the State Department will be in contact shortly. But Tony spent a good portion of his career, about 16 years, working directly with the United Kingdom, helping them in their program. And I know firsthand from discussions with the UK, as well as talking to Tony, that was really a great relationship on both sides. Tony had a tremendous amount of respect from the UK. I'll read you a letter from Commodore there shortly, and I know Tony enjoyed that. Tony took that role over for me when I was the main contact for the UK initially, and I just was not able to spend the time on it, and I asked Tony to do that. And it was a great decision because he was able to do it much better than I ever could. And I know the UK has appreciated that relationship now for 16 years in your role and lead of that role for the last 10. So kind of as a gesture of that, this is over in the UK at Rainsway, which is their laboratory. They flew a U.S. flag over their laboratory. So you may say, well, okay, it'd be like us flying the Union Jack over NML. So it's quite a gesture. We flew that over. That is coming. Unfortunately, I don't have it in my hand, but that is they've assured me mailed to my house, and I will make sure I get that to you. And I want to thank Dr. Chris Riley. I think Dr. Chris Riley, is in the front, Tony. Yeah. And they will, in addition to the flag, they will be sending over a signed photograph. And so again, including some folks who retired who came back. So this shows you how much Tony meant to the UK program, and they know how much he helped them. In fact, I'm going to read you a letter. Make sure I get my letters straight. This is from Commodore Mark Prince. Commodore Prince is really the head of their nuclear propulsion program. So we just got this. So let me just read that. Dear Tony, I wish to express to you my sincere gratitude for your outstanding commitment and dedication to the U.S.-UK Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program exchange over the past 16 years. I'd also like to offer my congratulations on your retirement following a hugely successful and varied career within the Naval Nuclear Laboratories, spanning some 40 years across numerous projects and locations within the U.S. nuclear program. From the beginning, you've been a stalwart supporter and champion of the exchange, and your leadership and passion have been pivotal in delivering the step change in UK core design and analysis capability that was essential to deliver our next generation nuclear propulsion plan. You were determined that we should understand that we had to develop a far more integrated way of undertaking design iterations, and were forthright. Forthright is their way to say you really kick this in the butt occasionally, but forthright in telling us what needed to change. You have facilitated, persuaded, cajoled, and supported our efforts with candor and patience, and have been personally involved with a number of design and program decisions that were instrumental in UK achieving the capability we now have, both in our design and in the supporting manufacturing infrastructure. It is clear that without your input, the UK would not be where we are today with our next generation design. However, your involvement was not solely limited to our future design. You have also been a key player in setting up joint testing programs and exchanges on post-irradiation examination that will have an enduring positive impact on our ability to support the current UK in-service submarine fleet. You have championed closer working between the US and UK that will endure for many years to come. I have lost count of the number of personal expressions of thanks that have been conveyed from people across the entire UK program. The number of those you have helped with both professional and personal challenges is immense, and a testament to your dedication to the people to deliver our programs. You will be a sad loss to the exchange, and as testimony to your strength of character, excellent reputation, and professionalism, you will be greatly missed. On behalf of the UK Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, both past and present, I thank you for your support and dedication. None of the successes we have realized in the past 16 years have been possible without the support you so generously provided. I wish you good health and a fulfilling retirement with your family, and I hope you find time to enjoy some enjoyable cycling and skiing trips. Yours, Mark Prince. Tony, it's been a pleasure to work with you on both sides of the pond, and your frank, informal advice has been welcomed. So I wish you all the best in retirement. So again, a very nice letter from their equivalent of our Admiral Club. So, what a tremendous career, right? Think about that. I said, well, for God's sakes, what did the Navy do before Tony worked for NNL? So I started thinking about, well, what would Tony do, right? So I thought of a couple great moments in history, and I said, well, what if Tony were there? So, great moment in naval history. George Washington crossing the Delaware, right, to go to Trenton. Brought the troops over there. Well, George was in a rush. He wanted to get going across there to get those troops. But, if Tony were there, he'd be like, slow down there, George. He'd be looking at the thermal margin of that rowboat. there's some splinters, right? Got splinters in it. So Tony would have been making sure that George did not exceed the rating of that robot. So the end of torpedoes, full speed ahead. Well, Farragut, right? Great story in history. And I forgot all the details, but he's ready to go. In this case, what would Tony have done? Here's Tony. Don't worry. He's checked the margin page, and they're rated for full speed. So, Tony, if you had been there, we'd have kept things honest. I just, how the hell we managed back in the old days. Now, Tony faced the same problem that a number of us. If you tell your kids when they're small you're an engineer, what do they think of? They think of a train engineer, right? Nobody cares about an M&L engineer. That is not exactly what they say. Train engineer. And it's hard to break it to them that that's not what you do. Right? They're real excited, and everything. And so Tony had the same problem. He had to live this life, and you can see how sad he is about that. And the poor kids, they're all excited, and Tony knows this is all a sham, right? And, it's kind of continued on because Halloween, all right, hey, Dad, dress up like you do at work, right? Tony once again. So I was a little worried tonight. I didn't know if the kids knew, Tony, that you really aren't a railroad engineer. So I was afraid, kind of like breaking in Santa Claus, I was afraid to break the story. So hopefully you've told them in the meantime, but if not, the story's out. So I apologize. I apologize if I broke some news to the kids. All right. Yeah. So, most people, they go through phases in their life. So Tony had a little bit of a dark phase. Being an N&L engineer isn't always as glamorous as it might seem. You got to mix it up a little bit. So Tony tried to get a little something to, liven up things a little bit, and he went through a little bit of a hack phase. So luckily, I can report he's through that. But there was the beanie. He seemed to like that one, and that wasn't too bad. Looks like some more traditional headdress here. Yeah, this wouldn't have been in your personnel folder. This is much better. And I'm happy to report that the dreadlock phase did not last. So Tony, I think I speak for all of us to say we're glad you're through your hack phase. So finally, when I went over to talk to Kathy about Tony's retirement, he was in Pittsburgh, so I said, great, you got him away out of town, so I'm going to go talk to the boss. I said, Kathy, what do you think about Tony's retirement? And she looked at me, and she said, well, Tony moves at a little different speed. I said, yep, I know that. So we had a little chance to chat while you were away, and we had some thoughts about what you might be able to do in retirement. And so Kathy said, Tony he loves this wagon. He loves driving kids around in a wagon. So you can see this is the early version. The wagon's a little older, and he's got the radial flyer, but he's getting the knack of it. So this is his startup. He's starting to get a little bit of experience. Now you can see business is starting to pick up. Right? He's still got the radial flyer, but he's got a little bit of a line now. So now the radial flyer, you can see, it's not very safe. It's easy to topple out. So Tony upped and down a little bit. A couple safety shares later, and he realized that was not going to be good for business. And finally, now that he can afford it, he's got a John Deere. So he's really. So I think we're on to something, Tony. I think that getting. Yeah. So I think. Now, there were some busts along the way. Tony thought maybe the tractor business wasn't good. Tried the elephant, not good. You can see nobody's there. Tony's a little sad, so that one didn't go too well. The bike, that was good, but he couldn't take anybody on a ride, so that was not going to be a good business. And his grandson loved this, but it wasn't. He decided against the fake cow. So now that Tony's retired, I think we've got a good opportunity here. He's going to up his game, and this is his next tractor he's going to do for the tractor pull. So we got a few ideas there. All right, but in all seriousness, I know that as much as work is important to Tony, his family's even more important. And these are the things that will keep Tony busy in retirement. I'm a little worried about the rum shirt with the child, but Child Protective Services seemed okay with it, so And last but not least, there's the family, and I know that that is what will bring you much happiness. So, Tony, congratulations and all the best to you. Thank you.
That is what it's all about.
That's right. So we do have some gifts and things to thank you for. So, let me start. Got a lot of things here, Tony. This is like Christmas time. So let me start with one that is very special, and I will tell a story. This is from Laurel Steinhurst. Wow. So Laurel Steinhurst is our 08 I-1. If you don't know, that's our operating reactor. She's our group head, and we work with Laurel Steinhurst quite a bit. Some of us work with Laurel more than we'd like, given all the problems that we have. We're often, I'm sure she would not like would rather not work with us as much, but Laurel is very dedicated, and when Tony mentioned his retirement, she called me, and I think she called Tracy, and she said, would Tony like a quilt? Wow. And so I said, well, first of all, what an incredibly generous offer, because you know how much work, right? This isn't something you just go get. I said, well, I know Tony would love it, and she goes, okay. So she had mailed me a quilt. So this, I won't take it all out, but this is from Laurel Steinhurst. Laurel, if you're online, I just want to acknowledge this. It's beautiful, and it's called Tony's Concurrence Quilt, June 30th, 2021, by Laurel. And so Laurel sent me a note. She said, well, the joke is, this is Tony's concurrence quilt, and it's not clear that we either concur, we wish him a happy retirement, or we concur he cannot leave the NR program. So, and of course, this is why it takes so long to get a concurrence out of naval reactors, because they have to make a quilt for everyone. So again, a beautiful gift, and I know Laurel wanted to express her appreciation. She wasn't able to be here, but really a great gift. And again, that's from Laurel Steinhurst. So.
Laurel, I hope you're on the line. Thank you very much. This is fantastic.
Oh, good.
She can hear you.
Thank you, Laurel.
Great. Yeah, beautiful. Really
This is gorgeous.
Yeah. But wait, there's more. So, I will put this back. I didn't want to untie because it's so nice. But. This next item, Tony's from me. Personal gift. I apologize, Kathy, because you're going to have like a whole sub. You can give out to the grandkids at some point. This is a model of the Virginia-class submarine. And on the plaque it says, fair winds and following seas, happy retirement, Tony, 2021. It's signed the bottom. This is a gift from me to you, Tony, for all you guys. Put that in the box of safekeeping, but yeah, it's, again, Tony had a big part in making this so come to life. For the next gift, I'm going to turn it over to Ted Vickery. There's Ted.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, Ted. You're like a wolfie.
Yeah. Anyway, as we all know, most of us know here, that one of the things that we do is we do a lot of analysis work for reactor performance. However, it's not done when the numbers are done. It's always done when the paperwork is done. So, Many of us that have been through this and have written letters know what a joy it is to have letters reviewed. So I thought it was appropriate this evening, or actually the last couple days, that I actually wrote a letter for Tony, all right? And it doesn't fit anything that we would actually get out the door. It's pretty inappropriate, I'll call it that way, format-wise. The subject, as we start with, is the retirement of Anthony M. Basirico, an inappropriate War and Peace version that would never pass muster, but we need to write it anyways. Semicolon for fun and action. So what I did is it's been written. You can see that's lots and lots of block letters, paragraphs in the front that would have never passed muster. And then in the discussions, what I did was I put about 20 or odd different things in there that somehow remind me of you, Tony. All right. So things like cycling, your lunch. I'll just read this. It's like it's always the same every day. People know. Thank you, Kathy, very much. It's a sandwich, baby carrots, almonds, raisins, a small can of pineapple juice, 3 Fig Newtons, 4 if you're lucky, I was told. All right. I also need to. Yeah, I need to know whether or not if you are actually going to change your lunch, because I will need to sell my stock in Dole. just to let you know. There's things in there about like the task force and the SCV, just like I have it, it's easy. Worst, period, Thanksgiving, period, ever, period, in capitals. Right, Joe? We do have the famous picture that we talked about in there, it's shown there. There's fleet, there's methods, there's color blindness. Okay, dark pants, dark socks, white shirt. Always. That way Tony could put a tie on and pick it and get out the door without Kathy being, knowing that he was not in some fashionable, horrible fashion sense. We talk about the half mat deck that sits on his desk. We also talk about the Carpe Diem rock that sits on his desk. We talk about the spell checker that sat on his desk and still sits on his desk. We talk about all the RSPAs that we've done. We've talked about the UTRS documents that you've worked. There is a new one, though, all right, along with PAM4, THD 32, and BFT 83. There is now time for you. Okay? This is the latest manual in the UTRS library, and it now supersedes all other UTRS documents in your life. This is the new retirement UTRS document that provides the requirements for designing family time, especially with the grandkids. Please ensure that you read it, study it thoroughly, implement it without exceptions. Changes to the manual cannot be approved by NR, nor will your family allow it either. No dissenting opinions are allowed. We talk about computer codes, we talk about the DC trips, we talk about the laboratory trips, we talk about the UK trips, we talk about the document editing, which you are a giant at. I will point out, though, that I did find that well, I'm going to leave that one up. We talk about budget confirmation work. We talk about knowledge management. We have other topics that people can mark on here, and then we talk about retirement. And then we go through and have a conclusion. And what I've been doing tonight, and I will continue to do this, is this is a working meeting, just to let everyone know. All right, I have the red pen. Everyone is marking this up and signing the document. Okay, so that you will have something that you all gave to us.
We can charge our time for this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Teleworking.
Managers.
Teleworking.
Yeah,
Telework. It's telework. I have a lot of red pens. People are doing a wonderful job, so I'm going to pass that over, and we're going to continue to work on it. However, when when it has been marked up and when you boil it down, it is not a 26-page letter. It is what Tony likes. It is a one-page cover letter that is signed. So, for you, Mr. Basirico, the subject, A.M. Basirico, semicolon, retirement of, semicolon, for information. Dear Sir, purpose. The purpose of this submittal is to inform you of the retirement of A.M. Basirico. Background. As of June 30th, 2021, A.M. Basirico has worked 40 years, 8 months, and 16 days at the Naval Nuclear Laboratory, NNL. Discussion. Based on the work duration noted above, A.M. Basirico has completed his NNL career and is retired. Conclusion. A.M. Basirico is retired. Carpe diem, bravo Zulu. And it is signed, we do have the concurrences, everything is concurrent. Captain Obvious from the security department has signed, he's the manager. Steve Cruson, the advisor of S9G, still, has signed. Mr. D'Amico has signed as the owner of Fleet and Submarine Carrier Reactors. And Tracy Maroney, our AA extraordinaire, has signed from the 3rd floor. And just so that we can, make sure that we are not putting this into ADSARS correctly, I just wanted to point out in the keywords that we're putting in here, because we have to fill out all of this fun stuff in the back, folks, for those of you that don't know. One of those is keywords so that we can find this document forever. Under keywords, it says Kathy, grandkids, fun, biking, cross-country skiing, relaxing, traveling. So, congratulations, sir. It has been a pleasure to work with you for over 20 some odd years, and I appreciate it very much. So, congratulations. And now, it's an honor and privilege for me to introduce a very special person this evening. Steve Kurth is, I won't read everything, Steve, I promise. Graduated from Cornell University, and after having survived through an interview with our esteemed Admiral Rickover, started working at Naval Reactors and worked with Naval Reactors for over 37 years. And one of the things, besides working at Naval Reactors, that he has done is he has painted several of the ship portraits for both the SHE fleet and for the S9G fleet. So it is my honor to introduce you to Steve Kurth, who is going to make a presentation. So tell me.
Before I make the presentation, I got some stuff to say.
Uh-oh.
Let me ask you.
Now, I was one of Tony's customers for about 3 decades. And so I'd like to make a couple remarks for him to send him off in retirement. Over the years, Tony and I repeatedly worked with each other on a variety of things. Given his background as a reactor protection analyst and mine as working in the electrical and electronics areas, how could we possibly intersect? The answer is because of one of Rickover's quirks. It turns out that he loved competing people and disciplines against each other to ultimately ensure that the final product was as good as it can be. In this case, he assigned headquarters responsibility of reactor protection analysis, not to the reactor engineers, but to the electrical shop. A perverse decision arrangement for those reactor engineers thinking about that. In the early 80s, I became responsible for the Trident or SHE reactor controls. associated reactor protection analysis. Tony was an SHE reactor protection analyst, and I was his basic customer. The early operation of the SHE plant was very complex. I strove to try and change that. Together, we picked apart the underlying technical issues. We didn't always agree. One of Rickover's points was that if two engineers always agreed on everything, then one of them wasn't needed. Together with the redesigned reactor instrumentation suite, which Capel deserves great credit for, SHE was transitioned and became one of the easiest plants to operate with unmatched propulsion continuity. Next came the space reactor. I was assigned to the reactor controls and electrical systems, also its reactor analysis responsibilities. How did NR get that bizarre job? It turns out that a Secretary of the Navy in the 1990s later became NASA administrator. He knew that Capel and Bettis designed marvelous, small, reliable reactor plants. Today's exploration spacecraft only have at most a couple tens of kilowatts to work with. The NR space reactor would have provided 150 kilowatts for 10 years. Imagine what that could have helped do. I remember my first visit to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in California. I was anxious as to how they would treat us Navy interlopers. After all, we controlled a 10-year, $4 billion chunk of their funds. To my surprise, they welcomed us with open arms, saying, the lady head of JPL saying that if the NR's 50 years of stable and predictable funding authority would be a great thing for NASA's roller coaster funding persistence. Almost a year later, I was watching the evening news and I heard that the new NASA space reactor was going to be terminated. That's how we found out. The next day, my $90 million annual budget was adjusted to zero. What happened next was a brutal and painful downsizing. But for NASA, they successfully regained control of all their funding streams. About the same time, the technical expectations between the technical relations between the U.S. and the U.K. on submarine propulsion blossomed. Both Tony and I were assigned to this work. To that point, I never really understood how the UK developed their own nuclear submarines. It turns out that in 1958, we crated up an entire SYW plant and sent it to them, and they put it in their empty submarine. But within 10 years, that cooperation ended. Why was that? What happened was that a children's plastic model company called Revell released the model of the USS George Washington, a ballistic missile submarine. When I was in elementary school, I had one. It was cool. Half the submarine hull could be flipped down to where you could see the inside of the submarine. The torpedoes, the control room, and the propulsion plant. Rickover saw it and went crazy. He decided that the best plastic model more accurately resembled actual blobs of plastic and revealed too much information. That along with the fact that the latest Soviet sub closely resembled the George Washington. In response, the curtain of classification descended, and we all get to live with that today. So, what did this result in? Well, the next 40 years of the U.S. designed very highly important and innovative designs, including the S6G, the S6W, the S8G, S9G subs, while the UK basically did only incremental improvements of the S5W sub. It was decided on high that that was going to change. So that's how Tony and I got to work together in the UK, helping them design and improve the propulsion plant. I'll never forget him driving us through the English countryside along small little winding roads on the wrong side of the road through incredibly narrow one-way roads and going the wrong way around traffic circles. I know that if I'd been driving, it would have immediately caused an accident, and it would have been all my fault. However, I could also see how much Tony enjoyed traveling. But the US-UK work was challenging. For the UK engineers, really weren't interested in a lot of the innovations that we were proposing. They were quite set in their ways. Tony worked hard to push them relentlessly off those laurels and worked to peel off their reluctances like onion layers. For example, when progress in running the new US analysis programs lagged because they said that they wouldn't run well on their legacy supercomputers, we boxed up and gave them a perfectly gently used Capel supercomputer. That was one of the examples
You did that.
that was one of the examples that we worked together to try and peel that onion layer at a time.
You made that part.
I had lots of help. For the hard work, there comes a time to retire. For me, I retired from NR after 37 years, after finding my time was spent less on solving technological issues and more on working on overhead things like budgets and budget churnings. And last, I'd like to speak off my notes a little bit because it reflects something that happened in my retirement 7 years ago. In speaking, one of the speakers was the director of Naval Reactors. He was Admiral Richardson at the time. And he spent some time talking to the spouses and friends and people who didn't have security clearances about some of the things that I helped do. And for most of those people, this was the first time they had ever heard or known any of this. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk to the friends and spouses and people who don't have security clearances. Now, I retired as a senior executive, but I never had the horsepower to be able to talk specifics like the Admiral did. But what I will do is say that Tony's work has been very, 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 very important, and you need to know that. So for Tony, rather than retire a little bit early like I did, he's persevered and met most of these challenging overhead issues head on. You deserve a lot of credit for that, and my best wishes for you in your retirement.
Thank you. trying to push the UK into
Cajole. That's what the Commodore said. Cajole.
into the future. So basically, we were trying to give them tool sets and things like that, and they would say, we don't have the horsepower in our computer systems to even do that. So what does Steve Kirk do? He found a computer, a spare computer that we had, and gave it to them and said, now you can do it.
They still found reasons. And we killed those reasons
We
off
did.
one at a time also,
We did.
to your credit. Next, I'd like to present you with what was the commissioning portrait for the USS New Hampshire, one of the early S9G submarines delivered. The format of the commissioning portrait was decided by the original commanding officer. He really liked the sunset theme. It's reflected on the ship's hatch, and it's also reflected in this portrait.
Oh my goodness, Steve. Thank you. For those of you that don't know, Steve is a phenomenal artist, and there's a lot of pictures hanging around at Capel in the P building in 2500. There's a whole mural of pictures. That's all Steve. You do a glorious job. Thank you so much, Steve.
You're very welcome.
That's phenomenal.
So Tony, I got a couple other items, and I'm going to turn it over to your kids. So, Tony, obviously, we have as well this talent plaque that a number of us have signed. So luckily, we got an opportunity to get some folks who weren't in the area come up and sign it. So we got that. And I wish I'd known, but you picked for your retirement gift. Because you got like a whole fleet now, Tony.
I like submarines.
So when you retire, you have a couple of choices. What's the second choice?
A closet, a mantle closet.
Oh, okay. All right. This thing's really wrapped up. All right, I'm not going to completely unwrap it. But another model submarine, well protected. Shock protected. So this is not what we do, by the way.
It's the classified one.
You get the idea. Yeah. So, yeah. Right. And Tony, I'd previously given you in front of the UK because I wanted to commemorate all your work. I had given you our Fleet Reactor Engineering coin, right? And it's got our logo, putting the heat in the fleet. And I can't think of anybody that's put the heat in the fleet. And you take it out too, but you put the heat in the fleet. You've done more for the fleet than you, Tony. So again, congratulations.
Thank you.
And I want to turn it over to John. Oh, me? Okay.
Ready? Okay. So,
Jonathan, sorry.
you saw us in some of the pictures, so really appreciate just the time to say a few words. So, obviously, I'm a son, John, daughter Diane. So I started thinking about this speech. I think I remember cross-country skiing. We were up at Van Hovenberg, and you go, I might do something really dramatic this week. I go, I might announce my retirement. I said, okay, how do you feel? My wife's a psychologist, so I'm like, how do you feel?
How do you feel?
So I started thinking about, like, if there was this kind of event, what would I say? So I was like, you worked for Capel for 40 years, all the changes that you must have seen in those 40 years. So I thought, all right, well, what would be some good jokes to come up with, things that have happened in 40 years? So I started looking up boats that were decommissioned. And like, to my surprise, the very first Seawolf, what was it, 575, wasn't decommissioned until '87. So like, I think it was like only the Nautilus that maybe wasn't decommissioned when you, or was the only one that was decommissioned when you started at Capitol. So like, that was crazy. So I was like, I'll make a joke. Maybe you worked on the turtle from the Revolutionary War.
Washington cross.
Yeah, I saw it up there actually. But jokes aside, I think what's really more important is to share the personal legacy my father has left myself and my sister. So there's pictures to prove it now. When I was a child, I didn't know what being an engineer really meant. I thought it meant being a locomotive engineer. Very clear, very clear. So I got into trains because I wanted to be like my dad. My father frankly encouraged my love of trains. He built a wooden train in our backyard to play on when we were kids. Most families take beach vacations in the summer. Our family went to a train museum in Pennsylvania. And that was that picture. Not sure how much my mother and sister enjoyed those vacations, but I did. So I remember all those countless times. The other thing that my dad showed me was working on small engines, working on cars. Just a lot of memories doing that. I still remember when you replaced the clutch in the Mazda on the transmission, and the bolt that wasn't supposed to break broke. That was an interesting dinner. Suffice to say, I grew up in a house that encouraged exploration and an understanding of mechanical things that undoubtedly, along with perhaps some genetics, led me to become an engineer. Unfortunately, I'll never know the legacy you left at Capitol. I'm kind of sad about that. It's very clear you made a huge impact, though. But here is the personal legacy you have left, at least for me. And in typical engineering fashion, I don't know if this is going to get critiqued later. It sounds like it might.
Oh yeah, yeah, you will. Yeah, that's a good.
It's in bullet points because it didn't lend itself well to a spreadsheet. So, between your hard work and mom's hard work, you gave Diane and I an incredible childhood. You let us flourish as adults, and you taught us the value of hard work. We both ended up going to school for engineering, a set of skills that will always be useful and has provided us both with great careers. Always willing to give career and personal advice as we became adults, including pushing, at least me, out of my comfort zone to help me grow. I can't even begin to count the number of conversations we had on these topics. We'll cross-country skiing and biking together, but those are memories I'll always cherish, and I'm looking forward to more of them as you retire. You encouraged my love of the outdoors, whether you know it or not, and I think I took it to a new level, but you started it, so you only have yourself to blame. Mom sent me a picture when I think they were going through some of these pictures of us hiking in the high peaks, and I was 6. It was 1990 was the date. And for those of you who know the Adirondack High Peaks, this was on one of the brothers on the way up the big slide. And I actually probably annoyed my wife because I was like, it wasn't labeled, but I've hiked a lot up there, and I was like, I think it's this one. It looks like this picture I took 3 years ago. So I figured it was one of the brothers on the way up big slide. Decently tough hike peak, but I actually remember that hike from being 6, and I would say that legacy really has given me a lot of happiness. All the time I get to spend outside, skiing, hiking, doing all those things. So, thank you for introducing that to me, and I already passed a gift on to my wife, so Catherine, you can blame your sore legs on my dad next time we hike. You left me with the legacy of being happy, to lean into and overcome challenges, to be curious, and frankly, the ability to build a really good life for myself.
So I want to reiterate all the bullet points that John laid out, but also add just a couple from my personal experience as well. First of all, one of the things that my dad taught me was how to balance career and family, whether it was driving through a blizzard to get to Lake Placid for a skating competition, or rushing home from a business trip when I had an emergency appendicitis, or doing nightly multiplication mad minutes after dinner. We knew that we were always a priority. He also taught us to make goals, work hard to achieve them, and celebrate our accomplishments, which of course we're here today to celebrate my dad's accomplishments. And of course, if we hit a stumbling block along the way, to really look at it as a learning opportunity and not a failure. But of course, never make that same mistake twice. I'm standing here today as a female engineer because of my dad. I can be confident being the only woman in a room because my dad told me that I was capable enough and that I was smart enough. So that's why I became an engineer, a career field we know that is dominated by 80% male. I could go on with a long list of other bullet points, but I know we all don't want to be here all night, so I just want to end with, I think the most important legacy that my dad has left, and that is the value of family, love, and partnership. My dad's love has left his legacy to carry on through me and my brother, but it will continue to be passed on through my children, his grandchildren, and his namesakes, Luke Anthony and Matthew Jacobus. And as I was preparing what I wanted to say tonight about my dad, I was going over it with my oldest son, Luke, and he said, "But Mom, I want to make a couple corrections."
Let's get the Basirico gene! Light him up.
He is 5 years old, and he said, "You didn't talk about how similar my grandfather and I are." And his words explicitly are, "We're both colorblind, we both like bike riding, and we're both impatient." Probably no truer words I can say. So Dad, congratulations on your retirement. It is certainly well-deserved, and I can't wait to see what this next chapter of your life brings.
Yeah, Dad, congratulations again. Don't try to accidentally go back to work, as I heard they have guns there.
So there's one last act, and then I will turn the floor over to you. So I think everybody knows that they're in the lab. One of the things that we do when someone moves around, we fill out a job action request. So Tony, I've got my last jar here for you. Now Kathy, this involves you a little bit because you're taking over. So the process is that Tony's transferring organizations from fleet reactor engineering to home engineering, your organization. So I sign it, and then you sign it to accept him. Now, just to be fair, because you haven't worked at the lab, there's a strategy we use sometimes when people don't sign the jar right away. It's a little bit of a delay tactic, so you have that prerogative. So you have the power not to sign it. I'm the previous manager, you're the new manager. No, I'm sorry. Once you sign it, it's done. Then I'd have to sign it and take it back, and that's how that's going to go, right? So here I am. I'm going to sign it, and if you decide to sign it, Tony is all yours. Now, you don't have to decide tonight. I don't want to put the pressure on you. We got a lot of people here, but think about it. But you got till like Tuesday. So there's the jar. That's my last official act. And Tony, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, I can't thank you all enough. It's going to be hard for me, and it really feels very surreal.
and I'm very humbled. Want to thank, Steve, Carol, for putting this all together. Dave Pizzullo for the technology and the virtual stuff. Dave is phenomenal on all this stuff. And I know how hard this must have been to organize this through the COVID situation. And for many of you that traveled to come here. I'm going to read from some of my notes because otherwise I'm going to get too emotional, frankly, to do anything else. John and Diane, Father couldn't have wanted to hear better words. Thank you so much. And you guys have been fantastic. And I love doing stuff with you and Matthew and Luke, and want to do a lot more. Hey, I know this is set up as a celebration for things that I've done in my retirement, but I really, frankly, don't see it that way. So I dissent. Where's the dissent for?
Very well.
No,
we have a process for that.
We do, and I took a look at that actually. It's pretty long, but I view it as, hey, this is something that we've all done together. A lot of the things that you've talked about, I could never have done by myself. It took the team. It took all of us. So I, thank you for making all of these things possible. It wasn't me. It was us. And that's the way I'm viewing this celebration, and I hope you feel that way. The technical work that we do is really important. It's exciting. It makes a big difference. Very challenging, demanding customer, as it should be, because it's really important. It's important to the country. It's important to the Navy. This isn't, as you've said, not my first job. And I've run into good people and good engineers in other places that I've worked. But it's different here. There's great people and great engineers. And I really mean that sincerely. It's just different. And those of you that have worked other places, I think, could understand what I'm saying. Unfortunately, probably many of you, this was your first jobs out of school and may not be able to appreciate that. But it is different. And it's not just the job, at least for most of us that have worked together for all these years, it's more than just the job. I do have an example of what I mean by that. And I know, Larry, you and I were involved with this particular situation. So, several holidays, we had some issues come up that were quite difficult. We had one that came up on a Thanksgiving, just before Thanksgiving. And we had a design review, or actually I think it was a safety council review, Larry. And it was on that Wednesday, and the next day was Thanksgiving. And we did a lot of work to build up to that. And that evening, I think we went till 9, 10 o'clock at night in the conference room in 2500 in P7. And there was many of us that were working on the presentation to the Safety Council. And yeah, I did review the presentation ahead of time. I was happy with it. It was a very tough review because it was such a oddball kind of problem. Well, we left that meeting, and not everybody knows that building there, but there's a very large conference room, and on the outside where the doors would be normally closed, there's kind of a lobby. We walk into the lobby, and there's, I don't know, a dozen people there or so. And we walk out, and it's like, what are you doing here? Why? And it's like 10 o'clock at night. Why, what's going on? And we were concerned that, hey, there was some new news that was making this thing even worse. No, but what did we hear? we stuck around because we thought you might need us. Nobody asked them to do that. And that's the kind of people we have. Where do you get those kind of people? And it's you. It's all of you. So that's something that I will never forget, and I know you remember that, Larry, and some of the other folks here, I think, were probably part of that at that time. Yeah, there are many accomplishments that I've been involved with over the years that I look back on and I'm really very proud of. Some of those were in new design, some of those were in the fleet area, some of those relative to US-UK stuff. But it was always meaningful, and again, always with a team. There are some things that I think will continue on, and I hope you all pursue. So there's maybe 3 things that I want to point out that I would like you guys that are, and gals, that are continuing on beyond the retirees to push. So one is CAPS, Core Analysis Process System, incredibly important. I think the new folks that see that today is like, that just happened. It didn't just happen. When all of that started, we were night and day. Every project was in a different spot. Capel and Bettis weren't talking to each other, and it's all changed. But there's more work to be done, and Ravi will talk about that a little bit more later. US-UK exchange. Several of you have worked with me on that. I see incredibly good potential there in the future. Luke, that's part of your future. And where's Bob? So you know what my third one is, right?
Probably.
What's my third?
I thought yours was margin.
Margin. Margins management. Yeah. Margins management. And I know you know I can't say a talk without bringing it up. So
you're coaching me to bring it up.
Well, that was the intent. An incredibly important thing, particularly as our designs get to be longer and longer lived, with more and more exotic features associated with it. Having more margin built into our designs is difficult to make happen, but incredibly important. So I hope I leave that to those of you to continue, Bob and others. So I owe many of you really a big thanks, and I want to go through some of that. And you know, as John and Diane were talking about, a lot of that starts with my parents, because they left me lots and lots of good examples of strong work ethics, and I really learned that from them. My wife Kathy, who has supported me through thick and thin, long days, late nights, weekends, holidays. So I thank you very much, Kathy, because without that support, I couldn't have done the things I did. And not to mention the moodiness of things when things going got rough. And it wasn't just Kathy, it was also John and Diane, I'm sure, that suffered from that. And the moodiness was not just that it was there, but it was also that you couldn't talk about the why, because you can't talk about the work. So, thank you.
We're shocked to hear about the moodiness, by the way. Just so you know. Completely shocked.
My daughter Diane and my son John, I've always been proud of you guys. You've always made me proud, no matter what it was. And Diane with Luke and Matthew, that just continues. Family is, and I say that to all of you, hey, that's the family life balance, family work balance has to be there, and the support has to be there. So, as you could probably tell, great kids, and wonderful, they all have wonderful spouses as well. I feel that they're basically an extension, Catherine Nick. I feel like, I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm glad to have you in the family. I also have to mention two individuals at the lab that gave me a lot of help over the years, and unfortunately are no longer with us. Hunter Curran and Dave Heidinger. They were phenomenal in terms of helping me and guiding me, and I know I was not alone in that. I had the honor of talking at Hunter's funeral, and I have to tell you that was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, because that was a man that I loved as a fellow engineer, and I learned so much from him. And like I said, Dave Heidinger as well. I see them as giants in the program, and basically I had the privilege of being on the foundations that they developed. And I know, I'm sure some of the rest of you must feel that way. Special thanks to the folks that traveled here for this event. Steve Kurth, you and I go back a long way, and traveled from Virginia to be here. It's always been a benefit having you on the other side of the telephone. I'll never forget our trips to the UK and what was the word, cajoling those folks, and I think we made a lot of things happen. And from both sides, I mean, you were from one direction, I was from the other direction. They almost didn't have a choice. But we got them there. And frankly, you helped me a heck of a lot more than you'll ever know. And I really appreciate that, Steve. And it's an honor for me for you to be here tonight. Kurt Arnott and Donna. Kurt, I've always felt that you were a partner for me at the lab, and that you always had my back. And, you also were, a leader in the physics organization, which was incredibly important to reactor protection and analysis. And I think we supported each other quite a bit, but like I said, you always had my back. And you mentored me a lot. And actually, you're still mentoring me. We've been talking on and off about what's it like for the transition to retirement, and giving me a lot of good tips. I appreciate that. We've been fortunate that we've been in contact with each other through email and phone calls, and I hope that continues, Kurt.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Certainly will. And I have to say, the mentoring part, that worked both ways.
Thank you. Larry, my department manager for quite a while. You were always there to support not just me, but my subdivision, Larry. And that made a big difference. And it didn't have to be that way, but you did it. The things that you did when we had those task forces and things, we worked through what I viewed as some of the most difficult problems we ever had to deal with relative to fleet issues. All the support that you provided made all the difference in the world. So thank you very much, Larry. And again, it's an honor for me to have you here. You traveled here from Tennessee. I'm flabbergasted that you're here. Thank you so much. John Wolf. This was a total surprise for me. John and I go back to the AFR days when, Capel and Bettis weren't exactly on friendly terms. But we worked together to make that AFR core, which eventually became the Seawolf class boat plant, much, much better. And we had our ideas at Capel. Bettis had their ideas in terms of where they thought things should do, and NR was very good at being able to take those things and try to make the best out of what each lab had. And I think the Seawolf became a much better design as a result of that work. And yeah, we disagreed a lot, but we also got to better and better places as we developed the understanding of those disagreements. I remember, you know, as we mentioned a little bit earlier, Kirk McWilliams and other folks there, I really got to respect you through, you know, those times as engineers on the deck plates. And then, you know, you moved on and eventually became the general manager, and ran into you from time to time and always appreciated the support you gave me, John. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. We all benefit.
Thank you. And I believe there's folks out there in our virtual land, and apparently that's only a one-way thing, I'm guessing, Dave? Okay, so thank you, who's ever there, and I can't tell. But
Laurel Steiner's.
Laurel's there. Gerald Kavich is probably there, I'm guessing. I believe there's other folks there at Bettis. All of you, you've been a tremendous support for me, and I've always enjoyed working with you. And again, we haven't always agreed. And as you said, Steve, you know, if you have two people that always agree, you don't need the other person. We've all learned from each other and benefited from that, so I appreciate that. But the one thing I want to point out, though, is that the culture that NR drives us to have just makes us all better. And I'm not quite sure what it is or how it gets put into place, but it's a really strong culture of doing it right, doing the thing that's important, be blunt about where things are. And I can tell you, having worked with another nation's Navy, an organization, we're trying to teach them some of those features because it is so important and it really helps us make better and better stuff. So, NR, those of you that are listening, do not change that. That culture is really important. Keep that up and keep pushing us for that. So, you know, obviously it's been an honor for me to work with you. But I want to talk a little bit about my organization, my subdivision. Really strong technical team around me, and that's what's helped me. So starting off with my staff, my unit manager staff. Rick DeBink and Terry Otis at Bettis. I'm assuming they're in virtual land, but I'm not sure. And John Burgess, Ravi Shahan, and Matt Garin, who are here tonight. They're headquartered here at Knowles. Great leaders, great staff. I couldn't ask for a better group of managers to work with. And I've also been fortunate to have some good ones that have moved on. Tom Nicholson, who just recently retired. Steve Bjork, who retired a few years ago. I miss you guys dearly, and although Tom has only left about a month ago, I miss you. And Ted, who moved on to some other pastures within NNL, but you and I worked together for a long, long time in various different capacities, and I really appreciate that all the time. There are, you know, the subdivision advisors, great, wonderful team of talented engineers. Couldn't ask for a better group. Several of them are here. Probably several of them in virtual land. Ed Greenslit, who will be retiring shortly. Steve Cruson. Steve, thank you.
Not retiring shortly.
You hope.
Joe,
Where's that jar?
Joe Wicks Norris. And I want to point out that there's four of you, also Paul Ward, who not only, you know, really good advisor engineers, but also very involved with the US-UK exchange. You've made a difference there. Joe has always been my right-hand man in terms of dealing with things with the UK. And the rest of you, in one way or another, strong technical input with the UK. And, you know, although I got that note from Commodore Prince, you all made a lot of the things happen. Ed was there for 4 years, and basically their entire thermal design basis is thank you to Ed. But there's others too that have been involved with the exchange. Some of them here. Dan Kelly, thank you for your help. Jay White, who's now retired, but it's not the same without you, Jay. And I really mean that.
Yep.
Luke Legase, who's taken on some new activity that's really got a lot of potential. And of course, John Ashcroft. Well, yes, John. And, thank you for all your support there with all of that. I appreciate it. Let's see. I do have a few gifts that I want to hand out, although I have to just go to the back of the room.
Stay there. We'll get it.
He says a few, that's an understatement.
Tony and I strategically take the smaller package. This is our management training.
The first one is actually for my wife.
Oh.
My daughter Diane. My second daughter. You guys have to stop holding this because my wonderful admin. So thank you. You two have both missed your callings. If you don't know Tracy, phenomenal admin, number one, but travel arranger extraordinaire. If you ever need advice on travel, but when we first started doing the international travel, we didn't have the wonderful HRMS system. HRG, I'm sorry. And you were able to get flights for, I don't know how you did it, but incredibly, it saved us so much budget that we could do extra trips. And
Nice job, Steve.
$350 tickets to the UK and back. And that was for me and Hunter. And Carol, those of you that know Carol, you can never call Carol and not get a friendly chat on the other side. And you missed your calling as well because where is these things? This is old Carol. You could have been and can still be an illustrator. So thank you. And there should be one more.
Right behind you.
Oh. Okay. Karen. Thank you. You're welcome. You keep us doing the things we need to do. And, I don't know how many times you've had to remind me about things. Thank you. I have to get my box back. So I have to apologize. I don't have anything that's extraordinary that somebody gets that I got. That's for sure. And for the most part, these are kind of gag jokes, but not meant in a negative way by any means.
That's your disclaimer, huh?
That's my disclaimer. So let me see if I can find the one that I want first. Oh yeah. It's for Steve D'Amico.
Oh.
And
Not so funny anymore now.
Steve, it's been a pleasure working for you. And frankly, I've been blessed by a whole string of really good department managers that I've worked for. Larry, you, Vince, Dave Collum. I've had a small memento on my desk for a long time that's meant a lot to me. It's something from the Apollo 13 star. Oh. And I know we've talked about failure a lot, and I've been very concerned about the language that we use. And the thing that I have on my desk is failure is not an option. You know, we've been talking about, hey, failure is maybe okay, but I don't think we mean it that way. I think what we mean is, hey, experimentation and learning what fails and what doesn't fail is okay. And the faster you can do that and the less expensive you can do that, the better off you are. But mission failure, we can't fail our missions. So I'm very concerned about some of the language. I know you are, we've talked about it. So I'll leave this with you. This has meant a lot for me. When the problems have been tough, there's a couple of things that I look at. I've had pictures of my 2 children on my desk. And you don't know it, but that's been a way for me to kind of look back and say, hey, this is what really matters when the going gets tough and the days get long.
Thank you. I will probably put this in my office and remind people.
That's the intent. So thank you very much, Steve. And you know, I can't thank you enough for everything you've been doing. I wish I had something to give everybody. Matt Guerin. Where's Matt?
Front and center, Matt.
Oh, I gotta pull this out.
He's continuing his test.
I have. Matt and I have been involved with some of the toughest, I'll say, task forces. And Matt was always my person that tried to figure out and pretty much got us through the most difficult parts of it. And when you were not part of that aspect of it, you went off and found other ways to make things happen. And I will never forget that. I've already given you a couple of things at work that, frankly, I could not take out of work and couldn't bring in here as mementos, but a couple of other things. There's something from the Trident, but when we had that particular interesting task force, and it says Nitrogen Task Force, we had some mementos, and here's some others, but you've got some better ones at your desk. Thank you. Oh, my next one. Dave Pizzullo. Dave is one of those people that makes And you're always working on efficiency and how to, how can we do better or things like that. And again, as I was going through some of my old things that I had on my desk, I came across some things from Dave Heidegger on that subject. And I thought, who could I give that to? Yeah. And I actually have some others, if you pass by my desk last week, that are marked a little bit differently than no markings, that I couldn't bring in here. But this is for you.
Thank you.
And the other ones are even a little more interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Robbie Shahan. For those of you that know it, Robbie, you will know that he's just a ball of energy. Robbie gets so many things done with the CAPS world, and I really appreciate you taking that over from what Steve Clark left that retired. I gave you something at work, so it was basically just kind of an antique thing for computers, because that's what Robbie does, is computer software. And it's a deck of computer cards for an old halfback. And unfortunately, it's classified, so I couldn't bring it in.
It's still in peer review, so.
But, for those of you the younger folks that don't know what a computer card is, here's a computer card. So I'll leave you with this. But the other important thing with the computer cards and the output that a ruler with a special thing on it to be able to figure out what column which thing is. So that's great. I'll leave this to you. Hey, Robbie, I'm expecting great things from you to follow on with CAPS.
Don't worry,
we'll
find out about it.
I know that'll happen.
So that's how we won the Cold War?
Let's see.
Russians didn't have that.
They didn't have that. That was the whole thing. They stopped at 77.
Kimberly.
HR's in the house.
HR's in the house. Best HR rep I've ever had. And I think the best HR rep most of us here have ever had. Unfortunately, you've gone off to greener pastures. Your greener pastures, our loss. But I've always appreciated having you there, Kimberly. You made a big difference. You helped me a lot, gave me a lot of guidance. We talked about our kids a lot, and whenever there was a problem to have to deal with, you dealt with it the right way. Some things need to be dealt with in, I'll call it grayscale. You were superior at doing that. So thank you. But I know you used to work in comp, and you're still in HR. So I've got something you might be interested in. So as a memento here,
Is it the
salary
curves?
curve.
It's
And it's also got, there's also something about here, a salary curve team, which actually I was part of. And we actually had statisticians. And so, thank you.
Regeneron's going to go to the curves. I can see it now.
Steve Krusek. So Steve did a little skit at work, and which was actually, I really appreciated it, very good.
That was good, Steve.
And it went over the Rickover principles, and it had various things that I was involved with over the years relative to the Rickover principles. And one of the things was, what was it? Did you ever write a report with, or did you ever issue a report with Tony? And it probably came up about half a dozen times, right? Well, I know you probably have some scars over that, but I think we got to better places. But I never told you a secret that I had. when I got your reports, and they were probably about 2 or 3 times longer than they needed to be, I went to this thing that I have in my office that has good words to use. And I was able to, look into these things and say, okay, I could replace that sentence with this word, I could replace that with this other word. So I want to give you that secret so you can use this in the future when I'm not there.
Paul and I use no hand for it.
Oh yeah, hand for it. There we go.
Steve, all kidding aside, I loved working with you and Paul and the others. I hope I didn't give you too bad a time on the write-ups, but I think we've got to a better place, and I appreciate all the effort that you guys put into it.
Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. Yeah, I agree, Huck.
Thanks. Joe Waits Norris. Joe, I didn't have something that I really felt was appropriate, but you brought up a picture of the US-UK, and they gave me one of those. Joe has been a person that's been dealing with the meetings, setting up the meetings, herding the cats, and a lot of these people that are in the UK that have that flag and so forth there are people that you've worked with over the phone and Skype, and that I don't think you've yet met in person. Hopefully someday we can get you over there. But I wanted to leave you with this, Joe.
Thank you.
And I've got another thing at work that indicates who's who, but Peter Phelan is there, and many of the others that you've worked with.
Great.
Joe, I don't know how to thank you for all the support you've given me over the years. Joe is probably the longest engineer working in my subdivision with me. It's been a pleasure. Let's see, then comes Jason. So Jason is...
I actually never worked for you.
Well, you are now.
I had a feeling.
But Jason is taking over my position, and I believe, and we've talked about it, that this is the best position at NNL.
I agree.
Correct. We've been talking about some language things, and I just wish you the best. You've got a fantastic team, and just a couple of little silly things. Building your team. Not that you need that, but I wanted to leave you with that. And let's see, which other one? Positive management leadership. I'll leave that with you. But hey, I'm confident in handing over the reins to you. So, and that this subdivision has meant everything to me outside of my family, so that's important. Thank you.
No pressure not to screw it up. Louis' whole career is in your hands.
There's so many other things that I'd like to say and do, and at some point I have to stop, and I guess it's at this spot. But I can continue talking all night, and probably people want to start thinking about going home. But I want you to know that it's not just about the workmates stuff, which is incredibly important, and the technical capability that you all have. But we've become friends along the way, and family in a very, very much way. And I really appreciate that a lot. I appreciate all the help you've given me, and like I said, my subdivision. So I feel fortunate to have been associated with all of you, and to have been part of this wonderful, wonderful portion of the NR program. The other thing I want to mention is, beyond Steve and the department, I think we got a wonderful set of peer subdivision managers. Joel, thank you for the things that we've been involved with along the way.
Yes, sir.
Denise, we've had a long time that we've worked with each other on and off. Again, we may not have always agreed, but we always got to a better place. So I feel very good about that. Laura Iannacci, who I think might be in virtual land, a fairly new person on our staff, but certainly not new in management. And Scott Carey, all of you who have been just wonderful support of me. So, hey, Annette, all I can say is thank you very much. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be associated with all of you. Thank you.
Get that tracker.
He's got a box. You can put more stuff in.
Yeah, we got a lot
And
of
I
stuff.
do have some other of those things from the nitrogen task force, and I know there's several people here. So I'd be more than happy to give those out to anybody that would be interested.
Yeah, you could run a whole experiment at your house.
So, yeah. So those of you that were involved, that would be
Yeah, right.
Oh, thank you for everything. Thank you.
Take one of those, Tony.
Good to see you too.
I'm gonna head up to the ladies' room.
Wasn't it fantastic?
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you. That's great. You know what name I was thinking? I don't know why. There's a Pelegi on TV. How she's doing? Yeah. I know. I called her. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. So yeah, I want to make that good for Tony. No, I'm good. I'm just going to package up some transportable. Great, thank you for coming. It was only a couple hours.
Sure.
So what's your fee again?
518 527 6664.
Thank you. Thanks so much for coming.
Nice job.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks so much for coming. Good seeing you.
Yeah, that's our primary residence. But in the summer, we have time to Hampshire.
Thanks, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Summers.
We haven't go one for Tony, so.
We're up here.
I had to buy this projector. What
About 4 hours to get there. Palm Coast,
£50 is had a 2002 inventory tag. I knew I was in trouble, so finally said, you know what? Yeah, it worked pretty well. Yeah. Nice and small, got the little stand.
So let me give you we'll catch up.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's, I'm glad to talk to you. Yeah, I've been thinking, I think about you guys. I wonder how, because we're still in the area here.
Yeah.
I know you had to
Yeah, we're going back and forth to Virginia. So I've been saying to Jan, I really hope
Thanks so much for coming. Thank you. Good to see you.
I couldn't make it up.
Thanks, it was fun. I had a lot of fun. Had a lot of fun with the slides. Yeah. I kept changing them. I was like,
we look for
it was like going through a program review. I had multiple. Oh no, this is we're like Tony.
We gotta get together.
Great seeing you.
You live almost quite in the neighborhood, but you're nice to go right away. So you can have to stop. Yep, we will keep in touch. Good. Congratulations, man. Thank you.
Thanks again.
But it's like, where do you stop, where do you go? But thank you so much, over the years.
That's good. Thanks. I still think about mine.
Pain in the ass.
Hey, Kurt, thank you for coming. It's so good to see you. Steve,
Pain in the ass.
Thank you. Good. Yeah, really, it's good to see you. Yeah. I was going through some old things. I saw your name. I said, I went down Kurt's too, so I was so happy to see you. Hey, Steve.
Thank you. And, I've always been glad when you've been there. And not so glad when you And to you. You've got a great future ahead of you. And you've got some good things coming your way, I think.
Qualified to be almost under anymore.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Life's gonna be
The one at the lab gave me one to borrow. Big projector. It had a 2002 inventory tag. I go, this cannot be good. I couldn't get it to work, so I went and bought one on Amazon for $90. I said, I'll just buy it myself. I said, this is from Gene Terwilliger's office. I go, this is what the lab uses? This thing is ancient. It's embarrassing. So I got to bring it back tomorrow.
Great to see you, Larry. Still in Tennessee.
Ford truck to move it, right?
Get to see any races in Bristol.
You can get beyond that.
Actually, we just had she needs to be able to communicate.
Yeah, I saw that. I watched it. I never paid Steve. Where were the letters?
What's that?
Where was the box of letters?
Oh,
It's
at
down there for vacation.
Yes.
In the wintertime.
Good to see you.
Geez, we really already missed the warm weather. Daytona 500 was on. Y'all gotta watch. It's home, And ever since
They got rid of me, yeah, so, I guess that's... Yeah. Still there.
I only live about 30 minutes from the track, so I usually go to the 1880 something, and put zero when I'm down in that area in the summertime. So,
Leadership, you can vote for
We have made things happen. Done some good damage.
A couple of orders of Lennon in there. Here we go. What's one or two more?
It's all fun and games till somebody gets hurt,
And I really mean it. I always felt you were there. You were my backup. I'm guessing it's in the 80s.
I'm all set. Yeah.
I'll never understand their decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were kind of like yin and yang.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, we had enough of
The physics guy that had the performance analysis on his side. We're still using that last year, so.
Today, well, I got it. They have my card, right? They're just gonna put on the card, or do I need to see somebody?
They didn't come.
I always admire.
You probably looked
I assume that they're just gonna.
probably have
You probably take both.
I don't know. I mean, they're going to shut A6 down. I don't know where they're going to put it. Yeah, it's still reused to government expense. That's the 90s.
Right?
Yeah, good seeing you. You can tell.
I have your photos. I have your photos. I tried to, yeah. There was a few iterations.
Dr. King was on
Didn't make it. I finally got down. Well, let me get those for you.
Thank you. And I want to get together with you. Okay, let's do that. What's the deal? Larry, I thank you. I should say that you guys together.
Good to see you.
How are you?
Great, thank you.
Great. Great.
Yeah, we're hanging in there.
So I take it you're enjoying retirement?
Sure. Yeah, well, I've at least forgotten what it's like to not be employed. That way.
Okay.
Or forgotten what it's like to be employed. So yeah, do a lot of woodworking. Done a lot of. I spent a lot of time on researching my family and genealogy. I've pushed my family history back quite a ways.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the novel's about
What
that
type
thick.
of woodworking do you do, Kurt?
Well, when I've got a suitable project, I make furniture. But you know, there's not that much cost. I mean, you know, how many pieces of furniture do you need? So, you know, I haven't done any big projects like that.
No, you're fine.
But I did get a lathe and take a wood turning or something.
Wow.
And stuff like that.
Okay, nice. That's pretty cool.
I took today off. No, I
He
took
lightly
today off
says
and-
furniture, but he has made me a sewing machine cabinet.
Wow.
He's made a liquor cabinet.
I
Missing
could use
some.
one of those.
He's made a table with inlaid marble.
I'll say,
Okay.
So he lightly, tosses it up. No, he makes nice. Oh, the table with the inlaid
it's
wood.
a yarn ball I made for a friend.
Oh, wow.
Reactor engineer.
Let's see what else I got here.
You should have the table with the
Well, I actually don't keep all my. There's another one. Couple others that I made, just like
Nice.
I always appreciated you saying that, and that
Don't get me started on grandson pictures.
Okay.
do that more.
There's an end table I made.
That's neat.
But just by just by you saying those things,
That's
it made me
a
do
combination of African mahogany.
Great to see you. Stop by. Please do.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I'm so glad to see you. Me too.
Okay. I can see it takes a little bit. That's not
It's still, that's time consuming, just about every project.
And you helped me with every little thing that came up. You were there.
excellent.
And
So I keep
I got
busy.
thinking, like, all my roles were just
Yeah, we live only about half an hour.
yeah, we were there. We did.
So you don't live in the area?
No, I live in Florida.
Oh, you do?
So different.
Okay. I didn't-
We bought a house
I
in
miss you so much.
So you came up just for this? Or?
No. I live in Florida. We have a second home in southern New Hampshire.
Oh, okay. New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Yeah. Right.
yeah, and give me a call, stop over every once in a while.
Gotcha.
I mean, my kids are here, my grandkids are here. No reason for me to
You've
leave.
heard of snowbirds?
Yeah.
We're sunbirds.
You're sunbirds, yeah.
90 degrees and 100% humidity, we get out.
Not for a lot of people do that.
So, but our daughters are
Well, it would have been a little too much.
We
Yeah,
have
they would have been
45 minutes to her, 45 minutes to him.
Jill, thank you.
Joy.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Appreciate
Right next to
you
him.
being there and giving me a little push here or there every once in a while.
I feel like, obviously, our styles are different in some ways. Oh, yes, my style is better because of that. I guess I'm trying to share your perspective. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
I will that's great.
Make it happen, man. You can, and you've got a great future ahead of you.
So when do you head back to New Hampshire tomorrow?
Ahead of you.
Well, we're going to lunch.
Make those things happen.
Oh, yeah, right, okay.
Okay. I hope to hear from you in the future and hear great things.
I appreciate it. Stay well, enjoy.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, man.
You have such a lovely family.
Don't I?
Oh, my God. When he was up here talking, and I was listening to this, and it was like listening to you.
Better get one and say goodbye, otherwise I'm not going to be able to.
His mannerisms. He is